رب العالمين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا وحبيبنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أما بعد، يقول الله عز وجل: واتقوا يوما ترجعون فيه إلى الله ثم توفى كل نفس ما كسبت وهم لا يظلمون. Inshallah, we continue where we stopped on virtues of special surahs of the Quran. We stopped on Ha-Meem. Ha-Meem are those special surahs which start off with the letters Ha and Meem. They are 7. First is Surah Ghafir, then Surah Fussilat, Surah Shura, not Shu'ara, Shura, Zukhruf, Dukhan, Jathiyah, and then the last one, Ahqaf. These 7 surahs start with Ha-Meem, the letters Ha-Meem. Here the narration mentions, عن عبد الله بن مسعود رضي الله عنه قال: الحواميم ديباج القرآن. Just like the finest and the best type of material is silk, the thick silk, the Quran is like the thick, it's like the thick silk, meaning the Quran's preciousness is such, especially these Hawamim, these special surahs, these 7 special surahs, they're so special that Rasulullah has described it as the highest form of material. Highest form of material. And this is, dibaj is that which we will, inshallah, our couches and our dressing and everything will be made of dibaj, of fine silk, and it comes inside the Quran. خضر من سندس واستبرق. Sundus is referring to fine silk. Istabraq is heavy silk. We translate it as brocade. Heavy silk, thick silk. So, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he used to read these surahs, these Hawamim, these 7 Hawamim surahs. He used to read these surahs very often. He used to read these surahs very often because of the virtue that is linked to these special surahs. The next hadith is on the authority of Abdullah ibn Abbas. قال: إن لكل شيء لبابا ولباب القرآن حواميم. Everything has a core. Everything has a core, essence. The core of the Quran is Hawamim. These 7 surahs that start with Ha-Meem. So again, it signifies the importance of these 7 special surahs inside the Quran. I'm going to try to go a bit faster. I want to finish this book, inshallah, intentionally. And inshallah, we'll move on to another book, inshallah. Here, there's another narration. عن خليل بن مرة أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كان لا ينام حتى يقرأ تبارك وحاميم السجدة وقال: الحواميم 7 وأبواب جهنم 7. حاميم, there's 7 حاميمs, and the doors of Jahannam are 7. لها 7 أبواب لكل باب منهم جزء مقسوم. So the doors, the gates of Jahannam are 7, and the Hamim are 7. Meaning, whoever recites these 7 surahs, it will be a protection. Each and every single gate, there will remain an angel. Whoever reads these, angel that signifies these surahs, that will signify these 7 surahs, and they will remain on 7 of the doors and gates of Jahannam in order to protect you. Meaning, you will never be able to enter the gates of Jahannam. They will protect you and they will take you away, and they will tell you, go away from here. You don't belong here. So, وَقَالَ الْحَوَامِيمُ 7 وَأَبْوَابُ جَهَنَّمْ 7. And he mentions, Jahannam is 1, meaning the names of Jahannam. Jahannam is 1, حُطَمَةٌ وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا الْحُطَمَةُ. Isn't it? Surah? وَيْلٌ لِكُلِّ هُمَزَةٍ. Lava is another. Sa'ir, blazing fire, we translate as. Saqar is another name. وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا سَقَرْ لَا تُبْقِي وَلَا تَذَرْ. لَوَاحَةٌ لِلْبَشَرِ. So how many did we have? Jahannam, Hutama, Lava, Sa'ir, Saqar, Hawiya, وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا هِيَ نَارٌ حَامِيَةٌ, Surah Al-Qari'ah. And the last one, Jahim. Jahim is oft repeated so many places inside the Quran. So many places. So these are the 7 names of Jahannam. These are the, some said there's 7 levels. 7 levels of severity. Allahu alam of the truth. But these are names that are mentioned of Jahannam in the Quran. In the verses of the Quran, these 7 are mentioned. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam here specifically mentioned in this narration. This narration comes in Bukhari. Comes in Bukhari fi Kitab al-Ba'th wal Nushur. قال يجيء كل حاميم منها يوم القيامة أحسبه قال تقف على باب من هذه الأبواب فتقول اللهم لا يدخل هذا الباب من كان يؤمن بي ويقرأني. Whoever used to read these 7 surahs will never be able to enter. Whoever used to recite these surahs will never be able to enter these doors, these gates. Subhanallah. So these virtues, why I started with these virtues is because a lot of us, we have went away from the Quran, to say the truth. Okay, we have went away from the Quran. We're not attached to the Quran. Nor are we listening to the virtues continuously. The moment you listen to a virtue and you know why you're reading something, you're going to automatically want to do it. But if you don't know the virtue, you're not going to want to do it. Okay, if I tell you the virtue of something, you're going to be like, okay, anyone, that's normal human beings. If you're motivated to, if someone says you're going to earn £1,000 today if you do this, what are you going to do? You're going to run, isn't it? Nobody earns £1,000 unless you're, mashallah, Allah's blessed you. But in general, you're going to start running. That's the purpose why we go through the virtues. There's a reason why we go through the special virtues and merits of the Quran. Inshallah, let's continue. The next one we come to is Surah Fath or Surah Muhammad. Surah Muhammad, after Surah Muhammad is Surah Fath. Inna fatahna laka fathan mubina. This surah came down at a time when Muslims were in so much grief, so much sadness. They just, at that moment, is 6th year of Hijrah, they were prevented from going and doing Umrah. Rasulullah saw in his dream that he was going to go and do Umrah. He went with the Sahaba, he went with the camels and sheep and everything. He went all the way to, he went all the way to approximately Hudaybiyah, which is not far from Makkah. There they done a truce, they done a treaty between the Kuffar and the Muslims. The Kuffar didn't allow them to go in that year. Umar radiallahu anhu, everyone knows who Umar is, he got a bit furious. He's like, are we not on haqq? Are these people are not on batil? Are these kuffar are not on batil? They're on falsehood. We are on haqq. We know that we're on haqq. Why should we accept this type of humiliation? Rasulullah told him to calm down. He told him to calm down, hold your horses. Why? Because Rasulullah gave the example. He said, Yabna al-Khattab, O son of Khattab, Inni Rasulullah, I am surely the messenger of Allah. وَلَنْ يُضَيِّعَنَ اللَّهُ أَبَدًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not disgrace me, will not make me fail in my propagation. This will not fail, don't worry. فَانْطَلَقَ عُمَرُ إِلَى أَبِي بَكْرٍ. He went to Abu Bakr after, because he didn't know what to do. He went to Rasulullah, he went with all this vigor, he went with all this enthusiasm, and Rasulullah just basically, more or less, told him, look, don't worry, this is going to come true. This dream that I've seen will definitely come true. It's just not going to happen now. Okay? This truce, when they've done this truce, a lot of the Sahaba were against Rasulullah. Many of the Sahaba were against Rasulullah. Remember, Rasulullah was told by Allah in the Quran to make mashura, to make consultation. He has to consult the companions before he decides. Of course, he's got the final opinion. Rasulullah has the final opinion. But mashura was a condition. Now, the rank of Rasulullah is the rank of Rasulullah. Ultimately, he didn't need to do any mashura. But Allah showed him the etiquette. This is how things must be. If you want to do something, make mashura. Even if it's a little thing. You want to buy a car, make mashura with a couple of your friends, with a couple of your elders, those who know, especially those who know that field. Make consultation with 2-3 people at least, and then go ahead. Okay, then go ahead if your mind and your heart tells you to go forward. So here, أَلَسْنَا عَلَى الْحَقِّ وَهُمْ عَلَى الْبَاطِلِ. Are we not upon truth and are these people are not on falsehood? And then also he mentions أَلَيْسَ قَتْلَانَا فِي الْجَنَّةِ وَقَتْلَاهُمْ فِي النَّارِ. Meaning he was ready to fight. Umar is ready to fight anytime, every time. MashaAllah. The vigor that he had was absolutely amazing, you know. Isn't it that those who die from amongst us, meaning the Muslims, are gonna go into Jannah? Our paradise is waiting. We don't fear death. We're gonna become shaheed. And those who are killed from amongst them, they're gonna go into Jahannam. We know where the masir is, we know where the destination is. So what is there to fear, basically? He was in that type of vigor. He said this. He went to Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr repeated what Rasulullah repeated. Allahu Akbar. The qualities of Abu Bakr was so similar to Rasulullah. If you look at the history of Abu Bakr, every time Rasulullah says something, if you go back to Abu Bakr and he says exactly the same words. Exactly the same words, exactly the same way, exactly the same expression as well. Allahu Akbar. This is Abu Bakr. Because why? This is his lifetime companion. This person knows his inside outs. All throughout his childhood, all throughout his 30s and 40s and 50s, and then right until his 60s and right until his death. This man's been with him all the way through. This is why Abu Bakr is Abu Bakr. Radiyallahu anhu. Wa anhum jami'an. وَلَن يُضَيِّعَنَ اللَّهُ أَبَدًا. So this was at a time when Sulh al-Hudaybiyah took place. On those points of Sulh al-Hudaybiyah, inshallah, when we go through Sirah, we'll go through a bit of this. The points looked like as if majority of the points were against the Muslims. Majority of the points were against the Muslims. They weren't for the Muslims. For example, if anyone turns into a Muslim from Makkah and comes to you in Medina, don't accept him. You don't have the right to accept him. Now, that clause on face value is like you're basically rejecting to allow them to come into the Islamic State. So where are they going to go? They're just going to lose their faith and they're just going to go back and, you understand? They're going to lose faith because they're going to be like, look, we don't have nowhere to go. We don't have anywhere to go and protect our deen, and we don't have the freedom to go and practice anywhere. We don't know what to do, where to go, who to learn from. So this was unfortunately the clause. But in the clause, it was men. It wasn't specific to, it was only specific to men. Little did they understand that the women that came, they were accepted because it wasn't in the clause. In the clause, it was only men. It wasn't women. Allahu Akbar. So all the women, they weren't neglected. They weren't rejected. It didn't go against the clause. Rasulullah never went against any agreement. If you look at all the agreements that he made with the kuffar, never ever, not once did he ever go against his agreement. You can go and check all his seerah, all his biography, any book, all the books you can check. None, not one. Until they broke their agreement, Rasulullah never broke his agreement. And Rasulullah makes, even in the hadith narrations, he says, keep your agreements. If you make an agreement, if you make a promise, give your word, if you make a treaty, make sure you keep your treaty. Okay, this is part of our Islamic manners and Islamic teachings. So at this moment, when the Sahaba were in absolute low of the low, they're like, look, we failed to make the Umrah, we weren't able to make the Umrah, now we have to go back to Medina, we're slaughtering our sheep and everything that we brought. That's basically a sign that they're going back to Medina. So in this instance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed this surah. Inna fatahna laka fatham mubina. Verily, we will give you a great victory. This happens even in Badr. In Badr, it was opposite way. They got the biggest victory. But the verses, if you look at the verses that came down, it wasn't of praise. It was the opposite. If you look at Uhud, they were at the lowest of the low. But the verses that came down, opposite, completely opposite. It's to heighten the spirits. Allahu Akbar. This is amazing. Then فَقَرَأَهَا رَسُولُ اللَّهِ عَلَى عُمَرٍ. Rasulullah recited this surah upon Umar radiallahu anhu until the last verse of the surah. It's quite a long surah. قال عمر يا رسول الله أو فتح هو قال نعم. Is this what you call a victory? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if Allah said it, then it is. If Allah said it, then it is. It must be a victory. It cannot be otherwise. The next year, the Sahaba came, they done the Umrah. So, sometimes your dua comes immediately. Sometimes your dua takes time to come. Sometimes it comes in another form. Sometimes it comes in another form. Allah gives you what is good for you. You might think this is good for me. In fact, Allah knows best what is good for you. Your way of life, everyone's way of life is different. Path of life is different. Everyone goes through a different path. The next narration, inshallah. عن عبد الله بن مغفل قال رأيت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يوم فتح مكة وهو يقرأ على راحلته سورة الفتح. On the day of Fatah. Now remember, this came down a year, maybe two. It came down Hudaybiyah. You're looking at another 4 years, approximately three to 4 years. After 3 years, Rasulullah came back at the Fatah Makkah, and now he's reciting these verses, this surah that came down on the entering of the victory, the great victory. He recites this after this 2-3 years when he's coming back into Makkah with full peace, no fighting. There's no revenge today. Just like Yusuf alayhi salam said to his brothers, no revenge, no need for revenge. Forgiveness, absolute forgiveness. And this recitation is also supported by another verse of the Quran. لِتَسْتَوُوا عَلَى ظُهُورِهِ ثُمَّ تَذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ رَبِّكُمْ. When you settle upon your conveyances, when you settle upon your transport. We now, in our context, we say cars. Back in the days, it was camels or horses or whatever they used to ride on, maybe donkeys. So, لِتَسْتَوُوا, whenever you settle upon your conveyances, upon your transport, the backs of you, عَلَى ظُهُورِهِ. So, upon the backs of the transports, then remember Allah. Make the dhikr of Allah. ثُمَّ تَذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ رَبِّكُمْ إِذَا اسْتَوَيْتُمْ عَلَيْهِ وَتَقُولُوا سُبْحَانَ الَّذِي, the dua, سُبْحَانَ الَّذِي سَخَّرَ لَنَا هَذَا وَمَا كُنَّا لَهُ مُقْرِنِينَ وَإِنَّا إِلَىٰ رَبِّنَا لَمُنْقَلِبُونَ. Dua is there inside the Quran as well. So this is also a sign that a person can read Quran loudly in certain instances. For example, teaching, a person should read loudly. Otherwise, the rest of us can't hear. So teaching, or for example, a person is sleeping, Salah's about to start. Maybe you recite a couple of verses in order for the person to wake up. Of course, in a loud voice, but at the same time in a gentle way that he doesn't suddenly wake up in fear. Next, we go on to Mufassal. Mufassal, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, وَفُضِّلْتُ بِالْمُفَصَّل. I have been, meaning all the previous, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, the first couple of surahs, they are similar to Torah. Next couple of surahs, similar to Injil, the books revealed to Moses and books revealed to Jesus and Dawood alayhi salam, Zabur as well. And I have been given special superiority by being given this part, this last part of the Quran. The last part of the Quran is known as Al-Mufassal. Al-Mufassal. It's also known as, amongst the scholars, as Muhkam. Muhkam. I went through this briefly before. Muhkam means something which has no abrogation, because inside our Quran we know that there's certain verses that are recited but not practiced. Why? Because they were revealed in the early stage of Islam. Of course, we know the Quran was revealed over 23 years. It wasn't revealed one go as a book. So there were certain verses revealed in the beginning of Islam which is still within the Mus'haf of the Quran. Okay, it's still recited. Still you get reward for every single letter reciting. But it became abrogated with something ما ننسخ من آية أو ننسها نأتي بخير منها أو مثلها. There is no verse that is cancelled. I'll just use cancelled. In abrogation, everyone understands what abrogation is. There is no verse that we cancel except that we replace it with something similar to it or something better than it. Okay? This is the verse of the Quran. So, nasikh and mansukh is obligatory upon the mufassirul Quran, the person who begins to teach the Quran and explain the Quran. It is necessary for him to learn nasikh and mansukh. If he doesn't have the authority to teach Quran. So, what is the Mufassal? Mufassal ends with Surah An-Nas. Everyone knows that. Okay. Last surah is Surah An-Nas. قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ مَلِكِ النَّاسِ إِلَهِ النَّاسِ. But it starts with, according to many opinions, there's approximately 11 opinions. Ibn Hajar says the correct view is it starts off with Surah Qaf. Inshallah, it starts off with Surah Qaf, Qaf, not Kahf. Kahf is in the middle of the Quran. Qaf, wal Quran al-Majid. Okay? Approximately last 4 juz of the Quran. Last 4 juz of the Quran. These are the smaller surahs that we generally use for salah. Okay? These are generally the smaller surahs which a child normally learns in maktab. Why? In maktab meaning 5 to 7 evening classes. Because if there were to happen that the imam, he can't make it for salah, a child, he's learnt it already, he's grown up, he's 16, 17, now he can lead prayers. If he were to be pushed forward, he can lead the salah, no problem. And he can read with the masnoon recitation as well. He could recite with the masnoon recitation. Because generally, Rasulullah restricted within those 4 juz. Generally. Sometimes he used to read out of them as well. As we're going to see all the narrations there. So, Rasulullah has been given special virtue, special superiority by these last 4 juz from Surah Qaf until Surah Nas. عن عبد الله بن مسعود رضي الله عنه قال لكل شيء لباب وإن لباب القرآن المفصل. In that narration we said that the lubabul Quran is Ha-Meem. Here in this narration, same companion, he says the lubabul Quran, meaning the core and the essence of the Quran, is the Mufassal. Okay, so there's no contradiction. There's no contradiction. A person, when you can reconcile between the two, there's no contradiction at all. So those are important in its place. These are important in its place. Okay, those are important in their place, and these are important also in their place. All can be considered from the Lubabul Quran because all of them are at the end of the Quran. Majority of them are at the end of the Quran. So Suratul Qaf. Suratul Qaf, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam in this narration, Hisham bint Haritha, she says, my baking oven that I used to bake was the same as Rasulullah, meaning they were next door neighbors. Meaning they were next door neighbors. So she was a next door neighbor of Rasulullah for approximately 2 years or 1.5 years. He mentions in the narration. سنتين أو سنة وبعض سنة. وما أخذت قاف والقرآن المجيد إلا عن لسان رسول الله يقرأها كل يوم الجمعة على المنبر إذا خطب الناس. Every time when he used to deliver his Friday sermons, he used to recite Surah Al-Qaf. And I learnt the whole Surah Al-Qaf by the oft mentioning of Surah Al-Qaf. Meaning in that 1.5, 2 year span, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to repeat Surah Qaf so many times in his khutbah that she practically memorized the whole surah. SubhanAllah. This is how important Surah Qaf is. Surah Qaf. It's a beautiful surah and it's got like a rhyme to it as well. It's got a nice rhyme. Whoever's a hafiz knows that it's got a very nice rhyme to it. And everyone knows the importance of the Jumu'ah khutbah. And I said this before. Jumu'ah khutbah has conditions which are different to lessons. Here we have a lesson. This is a lesson. This is not a khutbah. Khutbah is specific. It's got conditions in amongst majority of the ulama. And all, if you look at the action, look, our deen came from generation to generation. It doesn't just appear in books, okay? This is only for confirmation. I told you this before, confirmation. This is only for confirmation. Our deen came from person to person, generation to generation. That's why we boast with the sanad. We boast with the chain of narration going up to Rasulullah. Here, when we find these surahs being recited in the Friday sermon, it shows the importance of the surah itself, the significance of such a surah. The themes that are mentioned inside that surah is going to be so important that everyone must know this. Everyone must learn this. And I told you in the madhahib, majority of the madhahib, and if you look at the practice of all the, from Rasulullah himself, he was an Arab. He gave the khutbah in Arabic. If you look at the Sahaba, wherever they went to so many lands that were non-Arabs, but they still gave the khutbah in which language? Arabic. Arabic has a significance over other languages. Why? Because Allah chose it. Allah chose the language. إِنَّهُ لَقُرْآنٌ كَرِيمٌ. So, بِلِسَانٍ عَرَبِيٍّ مُبِينٍ. Very clear, in clear Arabic language. So, understand that the Quran, because the Arabic is necessary, Sahaba, Tabi'een, Atba'u Tabi'een, and all throughout the centuries, they done it in Arabic. Now, for us to come out and say we want to do it in English, and we want to do it in Bengali, and we want to do it in Urdu, what are you going to do? You're going to destroy that legacy. You're going to destroy that heritage. And inside the books of like the Shafi'iyya and the Malikiyya, they're very strict. Very strict. They wouldn't even allow it. Imam Abu Hanifa is a bit more flexible. Okay, he's a bit more flexible when it comes to this. Because he understands his grandfather himself, Imam Abu Hanifa's grandfather, was a Farisi, isn't he? He was from the Persians. He wasn't an Asli Arab like Imam Shafi'i. Imam Shafi'i was a Sayyid. He was the only Sayyid out of the 4 Imams. Abdul Qadir Jilani as well, mashallah. Yes, 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. So Imam Shafi'i, he was the only actual like Arab by descent. Whereas Imam Abu Hanifa wasn't Arab by descent. Imam Bukhari, Imam Muslim, all of them, the majority of them were not Arab by descent. Majority. So those who think that Arabs only done khidmah of deen, service to deen, this is complete fallacy. This is completely fairy tale. It's nonsense. It's not true. The non-Arabs done more service to deen of Quran and Hadith than any than the Arabs themselves, if you think about it. Look, if you look at the library, mashallah. Ji. MashaAllah. So there's many thousands upon thousands of scholars within even our times. They're not Arabs. They're not Arabs. Majority of my scholars that I studied under, a lot of them are not Arabs. A lot of them are Indian by origin, isn't it? So some of them are Arabs, some of them are Syrians, some of them are. But originally, you trace up the lineage. Maybe like in Yemen, you'll find Sayyids, actual real Sayyids that have actual lineages going up to Rasulullah. Their bloodline is actual Sayyids and Sharifs. Anyway, inshallah, let's continue with this. So the khutbah has a value which is not the same as just a normal general lecture or general lecture or a normal class. It's not a class, okay? It's similar to salah, but it's not yet salah. Okay, it's similar to salah, yet not salah. It's like, for example, adhan. If you wanted today, if you wanted to say, "Oh, I don't understand the adhan. Can I give the adhan in English?" What are you gonna do? You understand what you're gonna do to Deen? Deen's gonna go away from the next generation. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. I don't understand it. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Hayya ala salah, hayya ala falah. I don't understand. Therefore, I need to understand in English. What's gonna happen? Is it allowed? Legally speaking, is it allowed? It's allowed. You can do it. Allah is the greatest, Allah is the greatest, Allah is the greatest, Allah is the greatest. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. No, I testify that there is none worthy of worship except Allah. I worship. You can do it. Legally speaking, technically speaking, you can do it in English or in any other language. But will you do it? This is what's going to happen. You're going to destroy your deen. Now, when the khutbah is taking place in Bengali and in Somalia and all these other languages, what happens? Everyone's speaking. In the khutbah, what are you supposed to do? Are you allowed to speak? You're not even allowed to show someone to stop speaking. In the hadith, in the narrations, it mentions, isn't it? So the value of the khutbah goes away when you speak in your own language. Especially when you start speaking slang. I've seen many khatibs, they start speaking in slang. Completely against the... Keep it the way Rasulullah kept it. You want to say Quran and Sunnah according to the understanding of the Salaf? Do it according to the understanding of the Salaf. Don't come with your English. Don't come with your Arabic. Don't come with your broken Arabic. Do the actual Arabic, the Arabic that was revealed, the Lughatul Quran, the classical Arabic. Inshallah. عن جابر بن سمرة رضي الله عنه قال إن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كان يقرأ في الفجر بقاف والقرآن المجيد وكان صلاته بعد تخفيفا. الله أكبر. Qaf is approximately 3 pages. Inside my Quran, it's approximately, in the 15-line Quran, it's 3 pages approximately. Yeah. He's saying at that time they used to pray Fajr Salah with Surah Al-Qaf. Surah Al-Qaf, they used to pray with Fajr Salah, in Fajr Salah. Now, in Fajr Salah, if a person were to recite Surah Al-Qaf from the beginning to the end, to us, we'd think this Imam is making it too long. Allahu Akbar. But this was here the Sahabi is saying at that time we used to pray it short, as if they found it easy. Allahu Akbar. The Sahaba, when they recited, when they prayed, they went totally into the meanings. They literally went into the meanings. They were thinking directly into the meanings and pondering over the meanings every single time they started reading Quran. They didn't read Quran like us, like parrots. Okay, this parrot fashion is, I mean, the reward is there, but if you want to get into the mind zone of what the Quran is talking to you, the message that's coming to you, then you need to learn the Arabic. It's a necessity that you have to learn the Arabic. Then inshallah, we move on here to the next narration. عن عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه أنه سأل أبا واقد الليثي ما كان يقرأ به رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في الأضحى والفطر، فقال كان يقرأ فيهما بقاف والقرآن المجيد واقتربت الساعة وانشق القمر. Umar ibn al-Khattab asked another Sahabi, or if he is a Tabi'i. Now, Umar ibn al-Khattab, he knows the answer. He knows the answer. He's asking someone who's way lower than him in status and in knowledge. Why did he ask him? In order to give a lesson to everyone around him, that everyone learns. He affirms, then everyone knows that this is the Sunnah of Rasulullah. Because Umar ibn al-Khattab was always with Rasulullah like this, all the way through his whole life. So, here he asks Abu Waqid al-Laythi, what did Rasulullah ﷺ recite in the prayer of Eid al-Adha and Eid al-Fitr, the two Eids that we have? In those two rakats, what did he use to recite? Which surahs did he use to recite? So in this narration, it mentions he recited Qaf wal Quran al-Majid and Iqtarabat as-Sa'atu wa Anshaqqa al-Qamar, Surah Qamar, where the splitting of the moon is mentioned. So these are the two surahs that was recited in Eid al-Adha and Eid al-Fitr salahs. Next narration is very similar. It's on the authority of Aisha. So again, another confirmation from Aisha radiallahu anha. And another narration is from another Tabi'i, student of Ibn Abbas now. So 3 narrations affirming the same thing. That on the Eid Salah, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to recite in the first raka'ah, Qaf wal Quran al-Majid, and in the second raka'ah, Iqtarabat as-Sa'atu wa Anshaqqa al-Qamar. According to the Malikis and the Shafi'is, those who are into fiqh, according to the Malikis and the Shafi'is, this is sunnah. This is sunnah to recite in Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha. Surah Qaf and Surah Iqtarabat as-Sa'atu wa Anshaqqa al-Qamar, Surah Qamar, the splitting of the moon. There's another narration which mentions that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam recited with Surah A'la and Surah Ghashiyah. Surah A'la and Surah Ghashiyah, and this is more common. This is more well known, and because it's shorter, I think the Imams read it more often in the two Eid prayers. The wisdom behind this is the themes that is mentioned. One of the themes that is mentioned is resurrection. Another one is mentioned as the past nations that were destroyed, and the reason of the destruction. The destruction of those who rejected resurrection itself. Because a lot of people, they didn't want to believe in the resurrection. They just thought, look, there's one life and khalas, end of story. But once you die, you rot and you're finished. There's nothing that's going to appear anymore. And another one is that this gives the people going out together. So normally, we don't understand it because we live in UK. If you live in like Bangladesh, or maybe Somalia, or whichever country that you come from, any Arab countries like Morocco or somewhere, they don't pray their Eid Salah inside the masjid. They pray their Eid Salah in the Eidgah, in the Musalla. Yeah, we call it Eidgah, outside in the field. So the women are at the back, the men are at the front, the children are in the middle, and probably hundreds of thousands. Yeah, the way we pray inside like Stepney and Myland Park. That's the way. That's the sunnah of Eid. That's the sunnah of Eid, that you pray inside out of the field, because it's something that it's like a vision of the Day of Judgment. Everyone's gonna be there. Everyone's gonna be there, standing in front of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. So again, in these surahs, it's emphasized upon Qiyamah, upon the resurrection, upon rejection of the past nations, and upon the destruction of the past nations, and the reason why the destruction came about. It's for us to learn lesson. Again, all of these stories that you're going to learn inside the Quran are there. Allah mentions them not just for listening to stories. No. فَقْصُصِ الْقَصَصَ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. Narrate to them these stories, meaning these stories of the Quran, in order that they ponder and contemplate and start thinking, like, what's my ways of savior? What are these nations that came before us? Why were they destroyed? How were they destroyed? What was the reason behind it? So you must take lessons. You must take lessons from past events, from history. If you don't take lessons, then we're going to make the same mistakes. We're going to fall into the same traps. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "La yudlaghu al-mu'minu min juhrin wahidin marratayn." Isn't it? No Muslim must be stung from the same hole twice. If you make the same mistake, you get stung inside the hole, and you got a snake that bit you. Are you going to go into that hole again? No. you learn your lesson, isn't it? So you mustn't repeat the same mistake again. Whatever's happened has happened, and we mustn't fall into the same traps of shaitan. Subhanallah. Yeah, some imams, you'll find this more in Saudi. This is something that I must praise them for. Some imams, they've got such a beautiful voice. Such a beautiful voice. Like, I remember living in Aziziyah at the time of Hajj. Even not even at the time of Hajj. Even when I went for Umrah as well. We were a couple of days there. Majority of the days we were in, of course, Haram Sharif. All day we spent in Haram Sharif. But in Aziziyah, mashallah, there was an imam. Wow, his Quran was absolutely, like, the mic system is amazing as well. Allahu Akbar. But Quran voice that he had was so amazing. Allahu Akbar. You feel like you're flying. Your spirit is like going up to the skies. Allahu Akbar. This is the same narration. Allahu Akbar. Here, كاد قلبي أن يطير. Allahu Akbar. عن جبير بن مطعم, he says, قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول في المغرب بالطور. At Maghrib Salah, Rasulullah led with Surah At-Tur. Surah Tur, small verses. والطور وكتاب مسطور في رق منشور والبيت المعمور والسقف المرفوع والبيت المعمور. It's like short, very short verses. And this is the beauty of the last part of the Quran. The last part of the Quran is so easy to memorize. Allah made it such that, like, so easy to memorize. A child can memorize it. A child can memorize it. Allahu Akbar. If we put the effort in, we can memorize it. We can. You just have to put the effort in. Don't think you're too old. I told you the story about 56-year-old. 56-year-old. He had like 4 or 5 children back home. He left the children. He left everything. He's like, look, I saw inside a dream that I need to become a Hafiz before I die. He came to my madrasa in South Africa. Allahu Akbar. 80. Allahu Akbar. 80 years old, he became a Hafiz al-Quran. Subhanallah, subhanallah. Allahu Akbar. He became a Hafiz in 2 years. Imagine the amount of effort that person must have gone through. And we say we don't have time. We don't have time for what? We've got time for everything else but Quran. What are we gonna answer on the Day of Judgment? what are we going to answer? We've got time for everything else. We've got time for phone, we've got time for social media, we've got time for everything else but Quran. It's a disgrace. I'm talking about myself. Even as a Hafiz, it's a disgrace. The haqq of the Quran is not being given. The haqq of the Quran as a true Hafiz is someone who recites. If you recite, when we go through the narrations, we get scared because it's not fair. It's not fair to even consider ourselves as a Hafiz, because the sign of a Hafiz is someone who recites the whole night. Yasharul layali. He gives the whole night to Quran. Allah make us from the people of the Quran. You know, effort is required. Effort is required. So he says, Rasulullah, he read Surah Tur until he reached the verse, Am khuliqu min ghayri shay'in am humul khaliqun am khalaqu as-samawati wal arda bal la yuqinun. Until he reached this verse, and then am indahum khaza'inu rabbika am humul musaytirun. At that moment, he says, I felt like my heart was going up to the skies. My soul was leaving my body because of the spiritual enlightenment that I got from that surah. Allahu Akbar. So in Maghrib Salah, there's many ahadith. Majority of the ahadith in the Sunnah of Rasulullah, we know it's from Surah إِذَا زُلْزِلَتِ الْأَرْضُ زِلْزَالَهَا until Surah Nas. That's the vast majority of all the Sahaba. That's the general Sunnah of Rasulullah. The shorter surahs, the last plus minus 17 surahs, maybe 17 max, 17 surahs, maybe 16 surahs. إِذَا زُلْزِلَ until Nas. Shortest surahs inside the Quran for Maghrib Salah, generally. But here we see Rasulullah read Surah Tur. Tur is not short. Tur is approximately 2.5 pages inside the 15-line Quran. So sometimes he would read different surahs. Once he read Surah A'raf. Surah A'raf. How long is Surah A'raf? Allahu Akbar. Very long. It's in the beginning of the Quran. Very long. 8th para, juz number 8. So very long. So another time he read Surah Mursalat. And that narration is coming also. He read Surah Mursalat in Maghrib Salah. And the lady, the Sahabiya that narrates this, is like, this is the last Maghrib that I heard of Rasulullah. Imagine even the last words that Rasulullah said were preserved. The last Salah that Rasulullah led is preserved. This is the deen that we have. Be happy with your deen. Be joyful with your deen. Every single nitty-gritty, smallest thing that you can think of is preserved. Allahu Akbar. Next, we go on to Surah Ar-Rahman. Here, I'm just going to give you the crux. Rasulullah, this is on the authority of Jabir radiallahu anhu. The hadith is in Tirmidhi on the chapter of Tafsir regarding Surah Ar-Rahman. Now, Surah Ar-Rahman, Imam just read Surah Ar-Rahman in Maghrib Salah. Okay? Surah Ar-Rahman. رب المشرقين ورب المغربين فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان, and that continuously goes فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان. Which of the favors of your Lord can you deny? Which of the favors of your Lord can you deny, O mankind and O jinn kind? Speaking in dual here. Here, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam recited it to the companions, they just stayed quiet. They stayed quiet because they didn't know what to respond. But Rasulullah said here, he said, when I recited this surah to the jinn, so the day when Rasulullah went and met the jinn, and he gave da'wah to the jinn, and the jinn became Muslims, the jinn of Nasibin, Surah Al-Jinn, if you read the background story of how Surah Al-Jinn came about, Rasulullah went and invited the jinn to Islam. And many of them, they entered into Islam and they listened to this. Every single time this verse came, they would say, قالوا لا بشيء من نعمك ربنا نكذب فلك الحمد. There is none of the favors that we reject from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of them we accept full-heartedly. So, Allahu Akbar. This was the response of the jinn. So Rasulullah said, the response of the jinn is better than the response that you guys gave me when this surah was revealed. Allahu Akbar. So, again, some verses of the Quran, like for example, when we were in Syria, يُدْخِلُ مَنْ يَشَاءُ فِي رَحْمَتِهِ. Of course, in the Hanafi madhab, we're not allowed. Okay, we're not allowed to say anything in salah whilst the imam is reciting. But they used to make dua. Allahumma adkhilna fi rahmatik. Oh Allah, enter us in your rahmah. Because the purpose of the Quran is that you respond. That you respond to whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you. In the Hanafi madhab, we're not allowed to speak in salah specifically. Okay? And especially to read after the imam. Okay, when the imam is reciting, we have to listen attentively. This is a condition in our salah. In nafal salah, you can do it. In nafal salah, there's no problem. Nafal salah, there's no issue. Voluntary salah, no problem. But they're Shafi'is, majority of the Damascus, the Shafi'is. So they used to make the dua. When the imam used to say in the Fajr salah, we're going to come to that, the Surah Dahr, Surah Insan, at the end of Surah Insan, يُدْخِلُ مَن يَشَاءُ فِي رَحْمَةٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enters whoever He wills in His mercy. Here they used to say, oh Allah, enter us in your mercy. Enter us in your. They used to, the meaning the musallis, those who are praying behind, they used to reply in salah, Allahumma adkhilna fi rahmatika ya Allah. And then, وَالظَّالِمِينَ أَعَدَّ لَهُمْ عَذَابًا أَلِيمًا. And the oppressors, the tyrants, we prepared for them a painful punishment. Painful punishment. Allahumma hafadna. They used to say, Allahumma hafadna. Allahu Akbar. Something that you learn. The more you go, the more you travel, the more you learn. Just because it doesn't go according to your fiqh, doesn't mean it's not allowed. You understand? Maybe they've got narrations, Allahu Alam, I don't know. I haven't seen the evidences. Maybe. You know, they must have some type of evidence for them to do it. If there is, there is. If there is not, then it's not a bid'ah. It's not a bid'ah. Okay? Not everything becomes a bid'ah. There's sunnah. The opposite is bid'ah. But there's something in between called mubah, which our brothers forget. Sunnah is that which Rasulullah done all his life. The Sahabas carried on all their life. And the Tabi'in, they carried on all their life. This is how it came down to us. Bid'ah is something that's contrary to the teachings of Allah and Rasul. So for example, Ahmad bin Hanbal used to recite how many rakats? 300 rakats every single night. Tahajjud. 300 rakats of tahajjud. Is that a bid'ah? Huh? Huh? It's not a bid'ah. Why? Is it contrary to sunnah? No. It's not contrary to Quran and Hadith. We are encouraged to do more goodness, more salahs, more dhikrs, abundant dhikrs. Udhkurullaha dhikran kathira. Mention Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as much as you can, abundantly. Isn't it? So it cannot be bid'ah. If it's not against opening a Islamic school, is it bid'ah? It cannot be, brother. It's something which is aiding your religion. It's something which is helping your religion. Anything which assists your religion and whatever the fard that needs to be acted upon, that itself cannot be bid'ah. Bid'ah is something contrary, conflicting against hadith and Quran. Meaning there's no asal. There's no asal at all. There's no root of it found in our Quran and Sunnah. That would be considered a bid'ah. But remember, something which is sunnah, opposite, yes, is bid'ah, but in between, remember, there's a line called permissibility, mubah. Not everything becomes, just because it's not sunnah, immediately some brothers, alhamdulillah, they've got the gun coming out. Everything is bid'ah, brother. Bid'ah. No, this is wrong. This is completely wrong. Okay? It doesn't become bid'ah. It only becomes bid'ah if it's completely contravening the laws of Allah, contravening the laws of Rasulullah. Yes, of course. This is why I'm saying it. Our brothers, unfortunately, they're very quick to label things bid'ah. Of course. But that doesn't mean, like for example, Uthman radiallahu anhu, he read the whole Quran in one rak'ah. This is his record. Is this bid'ah? Rasulullah never done this. We don't have any narration mentioning that Rasulullah recited the whole Quran at night, the whole Quran in one rak'ah. It doesn't exist. So can you label that as bid'ah? You can't. Kissing the mushaf and holding it on your head, kissing and putting it on your chest. We have narrations from the Sahaba. Rasulullah didn't do it. Sahaba done it. Can it be bid'ah? Impossible. Sahaba done it, Tabi'in done it. Now we have sheikhs in Saudi, unfortunately, they say otherwise. But unfortunately, jahalat, brother. The problem that I'm facing right now is even amongst the sheikhs, because they don't know these narrations, because they haven't seen these narrations, they label everything as bid'ah. And now the followers and the students, mashallah, they're very eager and they're very young and they're very, they've got a lot of vigor inside them. They want to go to everyone and say, oh, brother, you shouldn't be kissing the mushaf. It's part of our deen. That's part of what Sahaba done. That's part of what Tabi'een done. That's part of, it's mentioned even inside the books of adab. Imam Nawawi mentions it in adab fi hamalat al-Quran. Tibyan fi adab hamalat al-Quran. He mentions it very clearly amongst the adab of the Quran. And when we were in Maktab, our Ustad used to tell us, if the Quran falls on the floor, immediately make sure you kiss the Quran. This is something which is aiding towards the respect that you have for the Quran. What do you call? All of these are from the sha'airillah. All of these are from the symbols of Allah. Anything that is from the symbols of Allah and you disrespect, you're going to be in big problems. For example, unfortunately, this is another problem about the beard. A lot of, you go to Syria and Egypt and a couple of the other countries in the Middle East, they have an issue. They have an issue. Okay, it's a governmental issue. Now they try to justify it through deen. This is wrong, brother. This is completely wrong. You can be mashayikh, you can be doctor, you can be the great professor, mashallah, you're the professor of hadith, you're the professor of fiqh. We respect you for the knowledge. Like Qari Abdul Basit, he came to Jamia Benori, Allama Benori, Yusuf Benori sab, in Pakistan. He came and recited. He was a very great Qari, Qari Abdul Basit, well known, whole world knows him. Great reciter of the Quran, clean shaved, absolutely clean shaved, not even a hair. Unfortunately, but the man had Quran, which no one had in the world. His voice, such an amazing voice. Allama bin Nuri said, if only I had what he has inside his heart, never criticize this man, because you don't have what he has inside his heart. So don't disrespect another person because he's not following the sunnah. He will. One day he will. But never justify. Never try to justify and make amends with what you have. Okay? This is going to be a great problem in your deen. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
استووا واعتدلوا سووا صفوفكم رحمني ورحمكم الله. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. لا أقسم بيوم القيامة ولا أقسم بالنفس اللوامة أيحسب الإنسان أن لن نجمع عظامه بلى قادرين على أن نسوي بنانه بل يريد الإنسان ليفجر أمامه يسأل أيان يوم القيامة فإذا برق البصر وخسف القمر وجمع الشمس والقمر يقول الإنسان يومئذ أين المفر كلا لا وزر إلى ربك يومئذ المستقر ينبأ الإنسان يومئذ بما قدم وأخر بل الإنسان على نفسه بصيرة ولو ألقى معاذيره لا تحرك به لسانك لتعجل به إن علينا جمعه وقرآنه فإذا قرأناه فاتبع قرآنه ثم إن علينا بيانه كلا بل تحبون العاجلة وتذرون الآخرة وجوه يومئذ ناظرة إلى ربها ناظرة ووجوه يومئذ باسرة تظن أن يفعل بها فاقرة كلا إذا بلغت التراقي وقيل من راق وظن أنه الفراق والتفت الساق بالساق إلى ربك يومئذ المساق فلا صدق ولا صلى ولكن كذب وتولى ثم ذهب إلى أهله يتمطى أولى لك فأولى ثم أولى لك فأولى أيحسب الإنسان أن يترك سدى ألم يك نطفة من مني يمنى ثم كان علقة فخلق فسوى فجعل منه الزوجين الذكر والأنثى أليس ذلك بقادر على أن يحيي الموتى. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. ألهاكم التكاثر ألهاكم التكاثر حتى زرتم المقابر كلا سوف تعلمون ثم كلا سوف تعلمون كلا لو تعلمون علم اليقين لترون الجحيم ثم لترونها عين اليقين ثم لتسألن يومئذ عن النعيم. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. اللهم لا مانع لما اللهم فسيحا آخر أهو أرض قاب قاب لهم.